Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 6 Part 24 based on novel. So let's start. The attention in the auction gradually shifted away from the seated Lin Dong. From what they had seen before, everyone knew that the Wind Cloud Empire was deliberately provoking him. All they wanted was to force Lin Dong to pay a higher price. It was very clear that Lin Dong had lost out in this contest. 1 million Nirvana pills was no small sum for most individuals. At the front of the Lone Moon Empire, Mu Lin was also observing the situation. He was rather surprised with Lin Dong's ability to keep his cool. Promptly, he held the latter in even higher regard. It is not wise for Feng Kang to provoke Lin Dong, Mu Lin gently smiled while he softly spoke. Does Big Brother truly believe that Lin Dong can threaten the Wind Cloud Empire? Beside him, Lin Muyuez gently raised her brows. Even though she had never underestimated Lin Dong, their opponent this time around was the Wind Cloud Empire, which had even forced back their Lone Moon Empire. Until things are concluded, who knows? Since you have met Lin Dong once, you should also know that he is no brute. Since he is neither a brute nor a newbie, yet still dare to openly fight against the Wind Cloud Empire, would you believe that he is not capable? Mu Lin smiled as he said. Mu Hanyu was startled. Promptly, her beautiful eyes involuntarily turned to look behind her. After keeping the soul fruit in his bag, Lin Dong had shut his eyes and his facial expression was completely calm as if his previous loss had never happened. Seems like things are getting more and more interesting. Mu Lin glanced at Feng Kang with a sadistic smile on his face, before he softly laughed and said. In the field, the heated atmosphere caused by the balanced spirit fruit gradually began to die down. Meanwhile, from atop the auction stage, Songqing turned away from Lin Dong and continued the auction. The next auction item was a low-grade soul martial art. This type of martial arts was quite appealing for most of the elite practitioners here. Therefore, its auction price reached 1,500,000 Nirvana pills. However, Lin Dong was naturally not interested in this low-grade soul martial art. Nonetheless, even though he was not interested in it, this did not mean that others were not. Even though there were many treasures in the ancient battlefield, it was still the case of too little porridge and too many monks. Therefore, there were very few individuals who could obtain an inheritance and they had no reason to give up on the soul martial arts in front of them. 1,600,000. 1,800,000. Lin Dong observed the explosive auction. Most elite practitioners were bidding till their ears turned red. This goes to show the frightening allure of a soul martial art. Thanks to their intense bidding, the price of that low-grade soul martial arts had already reached 2 million Nirvana pills in several minutes. After an intense fight, the low-grade soul martial arts was finally sold for 2,300,000 Nirvana pills to a high-rank empire that had fought the hardest. This finally allowed the heated atmosphere in the auction hall to gently subside. However, everyone knew that with less items being auctioned, the atmosphere would grow increasingly heated. The following items that were up for auction were all soul martial arts. However, their quality grew increasingly better. Meanwhile, the auction price also increased from the initial 1,500,000 to 2,500,000. The second time Lin Dong made a move was for a mid-grade soul martial art called Desolate Wild Cow Charge. The auction price for this martial arts was 2,800,000. This price was enough to scare off most bidders. Of course, there was many people who were attracted to it despite its cost. Nonetheless, after Lin Dong raised the price of 3,500,000, most of them were forced to back off. When he saw the crowd turn silent, Lin Dong chuckled. It looked as if he was extremely keen on that martial art. However, just as the smile surfaced on Lin Dong's face, a casual voice sounded out from nearby, 3,800,000. The whole crowd was shocked. When they realized the identity of the man who bidded, a peculiar expression appeared on their faces. Promptly, they all stared pitifully at Lin Dong. That was because the person who bidded was Feng Kang from the Wind Cloud Empire. It seemed like that fellow was intending to toy with him. Under the stares from the crowd, Lin Dong's face turned slightly solemn. Without hesitation, he coldly shouted, "For million! For 1,500,000! The sadistic smile on Phong Kang's face intensified as he said. The entire arena quietened down while several people silently shook their heads. Being toyed by Phong Kang, Lin Dong must be hopping with rage in his heart. Several pairs of eyes turned to look at Lin Dong's face. However, right now, a derisive smile suddenly appeared on his solemn face. "Since you want it, take it. I was just bidding for fun." The whole crowd was in an uproar. Those individuals who were originally staring sympathetically at Lin Dong were flabbergasted. They finally realized what had happened. This time around, Lin Dong had deliberately played Phong Kang. The sadistic smile on Phong Kang's face slowly disappeared. Following which, his pale face turned exceptionally grim as he stared venomously at Lin Dong. Moments later, he finally chuckled and said, "Good kid. Truly courageous." He had never expected that Lin Dong would actually dare to toy with him. "Better pay up." Lin Dong stretched his back, leaning back on his stone chair as he lazily said. Phong Kang's face twitched. However, due to the supervision of Song Qing, who stood atop the auction stage, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and swallow his anger. He did not want to be chased out of the auction house now. Immediately, he ungrudgingly dug out a Qiankun bag and tossed it onto the stage. Spending this sum of money on a mid-grade soul martial art that he was not even interested in, he had truly lost out this time around. In fact, even a person like him could not underestimate this sum of money. Furthermore, he would definitely lose out in the upcoming battle with the other super empires. Atop the auction stage, Song Qing curiously glanced at this sight, before he turned to look at Lin Dong. This fellow was truly interesting, to actually dare to oppose Phong Kang. An interesting guy. Mu Lin similarly smiled while he shook his head. Evidently, he had never expected that Lin Dong would make Phong Kang pay back so quickly. This interlude that happened midway had undoubtedly become the talk of the entire auction. Several pairs of eyes swept peculiarly across Lin Dong's body. The Wind Cloud Empire was an overlord in Wanxiang City. To be able to see them humiliated was evidently a satisfying event. After the interlude, the auction continued on. Even though there were mid-grade soul martial arts, the high-grade soul martial arts that Lin Dong had anticipated did not appear. Promptly, he contemplated for a moment before he finally understood. High-grade soul martial arts were exceedingly rare. Therefore, if a person obtained one, they would definitely not auction it off. As item after item was successfully sold, the number of glowing orbs hovering in front of Song Qing grew increasingly lower. Finally, there were only 2 items remaining. Countless pair of greedy eyes crisscrossed on those 2 glowing orbs. Everyone knew that they were the main attraction of the show. Song Qing lifted his head and stared at the 2 glowing orbs. Suddenly, a rarely seen fervent expression appeared on his calm face. Promptly, he stretched out his hand before a blood-red orb slowly descended. Just as it descended, the blood orb violently expanded before it transformed into a colossal creature and landed on the auction stage. Countless pairs of eyes instantly turned their attention to it, before they were all bewildered. An exceptionally white beast's corpse had appeared on the auction stage. That beast's corpse looked extremely peculiar and it seemed like it only had 1 giant leg. It gave off an ancient yet savage aura. Faintly, it seemed like the giant leg had the power to support the heavens. Lin Dong was bewildered as he stared at that old beast's corpse, which only had 1 large leg. Desolate heavenly cow. A shocked expression flashed across little Martin's handsome face as he softly said, "Desolate heavenly cow. Hee, that is some good stuff. There is still an ancient essence blood flowing in that beast's corpse. If you obtain it, the next time you summon the ancient crocodile, its strength will be able to overwhelm the Wind Cloud Empire." Little Martin chuckled as he said, "Oh." When he heard these words, Lin Dong's eyes instantly lit up. He had already used up the ancient essence bloodlines that he had obtained in the mysterious treasure trove and he had no way to activate his trump card and summon the ancient crocodile. However, if he was able to obtain the desolate heavenly cow's corpse again, this trump card would undoubtedly become extra powerful. The enormous dense white monster bone stood on the auction stage, emitting waves after waves of desolated aura. The surrounding air appeared as though it was showing signs of solidifying. This scene caused quite a number of people to change their expressions. It was merely just a set of beast skeleton, but it possessed such might. Hence, they really could not imagine just how powerful and unrivaled this beast was when it was still alive. Quite a number of gazes within the auction ground were focused onto the stage. Private conversations broke out at the same time. From the looks of this aura, many people guessed that the demonic beast that this set of bones belonged to was definitely an extraordinary beast despite not knowing its exact species. Desolate heavenly cow, type of ancient mysterious beast. This set of beast bones contains some ancient bloodline, and it is a unique item that can be used to train one's body. This set of beast bones is also an excellent item to be used to refine a beast puppet. Songtai's eyes carried some surprise as he turned his gaze away from the enormous beast bones, faced the entire place and said, "The auction price, for million nirvana pills." The entire auction ground was immediately turned off when these words sounded. This number of nirvana pills was also considered quite a great sum even for some high-rank empires. If it was a high-level soul martial arts in front of them, they might still grit their teeth and make an attempt. However, if they were asked to use such a price to purchase a beast skeleton, they would have difficulty finding the resolve to do so, even though this beast bones are quite strong. The price of 4 million is quite high. Lin Dong knitted his brows. Even he felt that paying this price for a set of beast skeleton was a little expensive. It is still alright and not too outrageous. The physical body of this desolate heavenly cow is extremely strong. Once you have removed the ancient essence blood from within it, I can even use the bones as an ingredient to strengthen the blood soul puppet in your hands. It is likely that its level will rise at that time. Little Martin laughed. Lin Dong's heart only quietly achieved an equilibrium after hearing that it was possible to borrow this desolate heavenly cow to strengthen the blood soul puppet. No matter what, he must at least recoup some of the 4 million nirvana pill price. Of course, Lin Dong also understood that even if he really did not manage to recoup the price, just the ancient bloodline within this bones was sufficient to get him to act. Summoning the soul of the ancient heavenly crocodile is originally the strongest trump card in his hand. However, he was forced to use all of the ancient blood in his hand in order to deal with the combined attack of Qianshan and the others in the ancient treasure trove. Without any ancient blood as an offering, he would no longer be able to summon the ancient heavenly crocodile's soul. This trump card could be considered to be useless. Currently, the 100 Empire War was imminent. That place would be filled with talent and demon-like existences. Even Lin Dong did not dare to guarantee that everything would go smoothly in that kind of place. Hence, if he was able to once again obtain this desolate heavenly cow, it would definitely be of a great help to Lin Dong. Hence, there was no reason for Lin Dong to give it up. The auction ground was filled with conversations. Even the 4 super empires at the front frowned slightly. The general consensus surrounding this desolate heavenly cow was that though it was a pity to give up, they felt that it was not worth the price. Songtai looked at the auction ground below in an indifferent manner. He did not urge anyone. After all, his heart clearly understood that if this desolate heavenly cow skeleton was taken out and sold to those sects which specializes in refining beast puppets, it would not be worth merely 4 million. Even if the price was doubled, those fellows who loved these bones like their lives would rush to obtain it. It was a little wasteful for this item to be auctioned in this place. The silence in the auction ground continued for a couple of minutes before a high-rank empire tremblingly uttered, "For 1,100,000. From the looks of the person's face and his voice, it seemed that he had only finally clenched his teeth and made the choice after a struggle within his heart. Many gazes swept over that person. Their eyes appeared as though they were looking at an extremely great sucker who was being taken advantage of. Those looks caused that person to feel a little regretful. These nirvana pills were his entire fortune. For 1,500,000. Just when everyone thought that there would no longer be anyone who would bid, a faint voice suddenly sounded. Immediately, countless number of gazes turned over. Finally, they gathered onto Lin Dong. All of them were stunned. What was this fellow planning to do? Lin Dong leaned against the backrest of his chair. He completely ignored all of the eyes that had gathered over. Both of his eyes were slightly lowered. No one knew what exactly he was thinking. This fellow. Could he be attempting to lure the Wind Cloud Empire to bid again? Some people began to chat privately amongst themselves. After which, those numerous eyes looked towards Phong Kang from the Wind Cloud Empire right at the front. At this moment, the latter's expression was clearly a little volatile. If it was not because he had been taken advantage of earlier, he would definitely play with Lin Dong again at this moment. However, as the saying went, one would be afraid of a rope for 3 years after being bitten by a snake once. He was worried that he would be played by Lin Dong again. After all, 4 million plus Nirvana pills was not a small sum. Meng Lai's expression was also a little ugly as he sat beside Phong Kang. A moment later, he finally spoke softly, "Why don't we forget it? Our main course will appear next and it is not worthwhile for us to exhaust too much of our fortune here. Once we obtain that heavenly soul treasure, we will let that brat suffer a fate worse than death." Phong Kang's expression was gloomy. He exhaled a breath and slowly nodded. Everyone in the auction ground looked at Phong Kang, who was both silent and still. All of them made a slushing noise in their hearts. It seemed that this person was a little frightened by Lin Dong's earlier tactic. The one who had just bid with a price of 4,100,000 was not angry when he saw Lin Dong joining the bid but instead felt a little relieved. He actually directly sat back down. It seemed that the bid from earlier had exhausted all of his courage and it was clearly impossible to get him to fork out even more Nirvana pills to compete with Lin Dong. Lin Dong, who had been observing that person, sighed in relief when he saw the latter sat down. Currently, he only had 4 to 5 million Nirvana pills in his hands. Moreover, quite a number of it was obtained by Little Flame from the White Tiger Hall. Although Lin Dong still possessed a batch of expensive elixir pills that would enable him to exchange for a large amount of Nirvana pills without much effort, he was leaving it as the killer moved to snatch for the heavenly soul treasure. Hence, he definitely did not wish to expose it at this moment. The private conversations in the auction ground continued while Lin Dong was waiting a little anxiously. However, no one joined in and increased the bid. Seeing this, Song Tai on the auction stage finally shook his head slightly. He could not resist taking another glance at Lin Dong. This fellow had extremely sharp eyes. The items which he auctioned for all had great hidden value. For 1,500,000. The desolate heavenly cow is sold. Song Tai knocked onto a board as he uttered these words. Only then did the heavy stone in Lin Dong's heart fell. He stood up and took out all of his fortune from his Qiankun bag without hesitation and tossed it towards the auction stage. Everyone could clearly see the joy on Lin Dong's face when he took out the Qiankun bag. They became immediately startled. From the looks of it, Lin Dong was really interested in this desolate heavenly cow skeleton and he was not attempting to fool Phong Kang again. Phong Kang, who was also paying attention to Lin Dong, felt his chest being stuffy when he saw Lin Dong's expression. This bastard actually dared to fool him time and time again. Mu Lin and the others a short distance away watched this scene with great interest. This was especially the case when they saw Phong Kang's ugly expression. A joy involuntarily flashed across their hearts. Clearly, it was rare that they managed to see such an occurrence. Song Tai on the auction stage received the Qiankun bag. He randomly swept over it and nodded. With a wave of his sleeves, the enormous desolate heavenly cow skeleton flew out. It casted a large shadow as it landed towards Lin Dong. The beast skeleton was quite large and it was also extremely heavy. While it was still in midair, the air pressure caused many people to feel some pain on their skin. Bang! Little Flame, who was beside Lin Dong, suddenly stood up when the beast skeleton was about to fall violently. He extended his hand and grabbed the enormous beast skeleton in a manner that greatly shocked one's eyes. His entire body did not move, appearing just like a giant supporting the sky. That aura of his caused the eyes of quite a number of people to twitch. Lin Dong smilingly extended his hand and stored the beast skeleton within his Qiankun bag. After which, he cupped his hands towards Song Tai on the auction stage before quietly sitting down. A surprise also flashed across Song Tai's eyes as he saw Little Flame receiving this beast bone with one hand. Immediately, he swept his eyes slowly over Lin Dong's group. These three people did not originate from a super empire, but their aura and boldness were not weaker when compared to these super empires in front. From the looks of it, quite a number of outstanding people had appeared in the ancient battlefield this time around. A strange commotion began to appear within the auction ground after the desolate heavenly cow was successfully auctioned off. Those many fiery hot eyes from around that were close to being boiling hot as they shot towards the auction stage with greed and expectations. Finally, they gathered onto the only purple-colored light cluster on the auction stage. This was the truly most valuable item in the Wanxiang city's auction. Heavenly Soul Treasure. The indifferent face of Song Tai on the auction stage also revealed a smile in the face of the increasingly heavy breathing from all around. That smile also contained some heat. Heavenly Soul Treasure. Even from his point of view, it was quite a good thing. Everyone, next will be the final item for this auction. I think that all of you should be aware that the next item to be auctioned will indeed be a Heavenly Soul Treasure. Song Tai's voice completely confirmed the final most precious item. Immediately, an uproar resounded over the auction ground. The eyes of those four super sects at the front, who had been remaining quiet, turned fiery hot instantly. The purple-colored light cluster slowly fell and landed in Song Tai's hands. Immediately, the purple light became weaker. Finally, it completely revealed itself in front of everyone's unblinking eyes. It was a black-colored metal seal with a deep and ancient color. The surroundings of the metal seal was covered with many mysterious lines. A winding black dragon was curled over the top. Its head was roaring towards the sky, shaking the heavens and earth. This is our final item. Heavenly Soul Treasure. Black Dragon Sky Roaring Seal. Song Tai's heated voice caused the auction ground to completely erupt. The atmosphere suddenly climbed to the peak. The black metal seal was only the size of one's palm. As it silently hovered above Song Tai's palm, the black dragon that sat atop it flickered with a strange light. Its ajar dragon mouth seemed to emit an incorporeal dragon roar that caused the surrounding space to solidify. All the gazes in the auction ground were currently concentrated on the black metal seal. Every gaze was boiling hot and greedy as if they wanted to melt the black metal seal. A Heavenly Soul Treasure, huh? Lin Dong's eyes were similarly focused on the black metal seal with a rather serious expression. He could sense a kind of extremely obscure yet powerful ripple from within the black metal seal. That kind of fluctuation far exceeded that of an earthly soul treasure. The four super empire leaders at the front involuntarily trembled a little. Their faces were filled with desire for the Heavenly Soul Treasure. Black Dragon Sky Roaring Seal. Heavenly Soul Treasure. Auction price 8 million. Song Tai's eyes shifted away from the black metal seal in his hand. After which, he turned towards the enormous auction ground. His voice trembling a little as he uttered in a faint voice. 8 million. An extremely expensive price. However, no one in the auction ground was alarmed by this. It was not surprising that a Heavenly Soul Treasure was worthy of this price. 8 million A. Lin Dong muttered to himself. This price was not considered too high. However, it would likely soar intensely during the subsequent fight for it. Such a large sum also posed some pressure to these super empires. When he now thought of the wealth that the Lin clan from the Great Yang Empire had, Lin Dong felt that it was really little to the point of being pitiful. It was likely that his current wealth alone would surpass the entire Lin clan. Of course, given his current strength, it was likely that he would have difficulty finding someone even stronger than him if he returned to the Great Yang Empire. Within one short year of training, his level had already surpassed the limits of the Great Yang Empire. The price of 8 million immediately deterred over 90% of the practitioners and empires that were hankering after this Heavenly Soul Treasure. Regardless of how much they converted it in their hearts, the cruel reality allowed them to understand that they did not possess the qualification or boldness to fight with the super empires. 8,500,000. It was likely that those four super empires at the front had been waiting a long time for this Heavenly Soul Treasure. Hence, just as Song Tai's voice faded, Feng Kang became the first to speak. His gaze sharply swept around the place after having shouted his bid, acting as though he would definitely obtain it at all cost. His overbearing demeanor was one that suggested anyone who fought with him would become an enemy of the Wind Cloud Empire. 9 million. Of course, this intimidation might be rather effective against an ordinary expert, but it was clearly useless against the other super empires. Hence, Mu Lin from the Lone Moon Empire laughed coldly after the former's voice faded. Feng Kang's eyes turned chilly. He looked at Mu Lin in a dark and stern manner. However, the latter merely faintly smiled in response, completely ignoring the chillness that permeated Feng Kang's eyes. Hee, since the two of you are fighting this intensely, my little empire shall also join in. The man had a fire tattoo on his back also laughed heartily. He waved his large hand, cried out, 9,500,000. The eyelids of everyone in the auction ground twitched rapidly because of the price that was soon entering the 10 million mark. Such a large sum was likely something that only these super empires could fork out. Lin Dong quietly watched this fight, not immediately joining in. However, his heart involuntarily let out a sigh. 9,500,000 Nirvana pills. If this was the Great Yang Empire, it was likely that even the all four great clans combined would have difficult forking out such a great amount of Nirvana pills. 10 million. Finally, the price was raised to 10 million amidst a loud uproar. The one who raised the price was one of the four super empires, the Forest Empire. From the looks of it, it seemed that these four super empires were going to enact a competition solely based on their wealth. Feng Kang's eyes narrowed slightly when the price reached 10 million Nirvana pills as a dark chillness flashed across his eyes. Immediately he directly stood up and looked towards Mu Lin and the others, before coldly laughing, I don't have spare time to play around with all of you here. I am only too aware of the kind of wealth all of you have. Your Lone Moon Empire can at most spend 16 million Nirvana pills, right? Mu Lin's expression gradually darkened after Feng Kang revealed the limit of his wealth. It was unexpected that such information would be known by Feng Kang. Am I right to say that your little empire's limit is 15 million? Feng Kang turned his head and once again looked at Mo Fen from the Leho Empire as he coldly laughed. Mo Fen's face twitched. A sharp and cold glint flickered within his eyes. It seems like you have bought one of our men, huh? The Forest Empire's limit is also 15 million. The leader of the Forest Empire, Wu Tuo, rubbed his face. He glanced at Feng Kang with eyes that contained an inexplicable meaning. All the gazes in the auction ground were gathered at this spot as they watched the shocking fight between the four super empires. The involvement of tens of millions of Nirvana pills at every turn caused them to tremble with excitement. Since I am aware of your limits, it is pointless to continue this kind of fight. Feng Kang smiled. There was a proudness that was difficult to hide in his eyes. He immediately looked towards Song Tai on the auction stage and declared in an indifferent manner, 17 million. Crash! Feng Kang's voice swept across the auction area like a hurricane, shocking everyone to the point that they became flabbergasted. Clearly, no one had expected him to be so aggressive and bold. To actually raise the price by 7 million in one go. In this way, the price of the Heavenly Soul treasure had now reached the terrifyingly high level of 17 million. Moreover, from the information earlier, any sharp person would know that this price had coincidentally surpassed the limit of the Lone Moon Empire. In other words, the Lone Moon Empire would not be able to raise the price any higher. The entire auction ground was deathly silent. Everyone here had witnessed another form of battle. It had nothing to do with strength. Instead, it was a true competition of wealth. Sure enough, Mu Lin's expression gradually turned grim in the face of this situation. The amount of wealth that one could maneuver was the most secretive thing when it came to such an auction. Hence, he never imagined that Feng Kang would be aware of such information. The price that Feng Kang had bidded was only 1 million more than his limit. However, this 1 million was also the last straw that caused a camel's back to collapse. It was very difficult for Mu Lin to surpass Feng Kang's bid. The Leho Empire's Mo Fen was also similarly ashen-faced as he watched Feng Kang swiftly blocking off all their routes. Feng Kang was all smiles as he gazed at Mu Lin and Mo Fen, whose expressions were ugly but were unable to say anything. After which, He turned his eyes towards Song Tai on the auction stage as he chuckled and said, "Auctioneer Song, it seems like there is no one else who is able to bid a higher price than me. Looks like this heavenly soul treasure is bound to land in the hands of my wind cloud empire." Mu Lin's face was ashen. He clenched his fist tightly, but he could only sigh in a dispirited manner. Song Tai's expression was calm. His eyes overlooked the entire auction ground and was about to announce the winner when he saw Lin Dong in the distance standing up amidst waves of shocked gasps. The gasps from behind caused Feng Kang to frown slightly. He turned around and his expression immediately darkened as he stared at Lin Dong, before sneering, "What? Even you wish to join this fight? Are you certain that a low-rank Empire member like yourself will have enough Nirvana pills to do so?" Numerous bewildered gazes in the auction ground were gathered on Lin Dong. Although they were aware that Lin Dong was not too poor when he bid earlier, the current price was something that even the other three super empires could do nothing about. Could it be that Lin Dong was actually able to challenge the Wind Cloud Empire? 17 million Nirvana pills. Even if Lin Dong really had reaped a great bounty from the ancient treasure trove, it's impossible for him to gather this much, right? Indeed, I do not have so many Nirvana pills. Lin Dong smiled and said in the face of those numerous gazes. Feng Kang's expression immediately turned sinister upon hearing this. He laughed coldly. "Lin Dong, what do you think this place is? If you randomly cause trouble, it is likely that you will lose the qualifications to participate in the 100 Empire War. Of course, I don't think that you will be able to live until that time." Song Tai's eyebrows slightly knitted together as he stood on the auction stage. He stared at Lin Dong and said, "If you are unable to take out the Nirvana pills, please return to your seat. You will be expelled from the auction ground if you do this again." "Auctioneer Song, although I do not have Nirvana pills, I wish to use something else as a substitute." Lin Dong cupped his hands together towards Song Tai and said, "Substitute?" Song Tai was slightly startled. He immediately frowned and said, "There must be someone who will provide a clear price for the substitute that you suggest. Otherwise, it will still be useless." "Ha, I think that quite a number of people will be interested in this item I possess." Lin Dong smiled. He ignored Feng Kang's sinister eyes as he clenched his hand. 3 pills that had a silver shine appeared in his hands. A potent medicinal fragrance immediately spread across the area when this bright silver pill appeared, causing the hearts of quite a number of people to move. "This is..." Atop the auction stage, a bright glint suddenly erupted within Song Tai's eyes as a rarely seen expression appeared on his face. "Crossing disaster pill. It will increase the chances of successfully passing a Nirvana tribulation." Lin Dong faintly smiled. He could sense the suddenly excited gazes from the auction ground. Lin Dong had collected quite a number of spirit pills from the ancient treasure trove's pill room. Amongst them, he had found a total of 5 crossing disaster pills. He left one for himself and one for Little Flame, as this thing could only be consumed once and consuming any more would not have any effect. Therefore, it was more worthwhile to use it to exchange for the heavenly soul treasure at this moment. Crossing disaster pill? The eyes of Feng Kang, Mu Lin, and the others revealed a shaken expression when they heard this name. Clearly, they did not expect that Lin Dong actually possessed such a rare spirit pill. "Everyone, if anyone is interested in my crossing disaster pills, you can perhaps offer me a price. If the price surpasses 17 million, I do not mind selling them, though it will pain me," Lin Dong grinned and said. The entire auction ground was completely silent. The crossing disaster pill was similar to the heavenly soul treasure. They were items that had demand but no supply and hence did not have a clear price. However, it was usually not too difficult to get a price of more than 5 million. The eyes of many of the high-rank empires flickered. Clearly, they were interested in it. They were unable to fight for the heavenly soul treasure, but they could fight for this crossing disaster pill. Lin Dong, the crossing disaster pill is priced at 6 million per pill in the auctions of the outside world. I will pay 8 million for each of your 3 pills. The total price is 24 million. What do you say? However, when those interested empires were prepared to bid, a voice was suddenly sounded out, immediately causing some people to grow furious. They were just about to curse and scold when they saw the person who had spoke. All of them instantly shut their mouths in a stunned manner. This was because the one who had spoken was actually Song Tai on the auction stage. This person who was supposed to be an auctioneer was actually going to purchase the crossing disaster pills from Lindong. This video will end here.